The Emilia Romagna Grand Prix is held at one of the most iconic circuits on the Formula 1 calendar, that is of course Imola. Now, this is a circuit that has a deep history in Formula 1 and has seen the highs and lows and the best and the very worst of what the sport can give us as fans. I'm Ollie Wilson for GPFans, and these are 10 of the most iconic races ever run at Imola in Formula 1. Michael Schumacher had just made his move to Ferrari after a world title victory with Benetton in 1995, and in front of the Scuderia support at Imola, the German genius finally managed at the 5th race of the season to take his first pole position in the red rocket of his new team. But the Tifosi would see their hopes and dreams of a Ferrari driver on the top step of the podium for the first time at the venue since 1983 dashed, as Schumacher suffered a brake disc issue on the final lap of the race, forcing him to limp home in second place, finishing behind eventual world champion Damon Hill. The Tifosi would have to wait until 1999 to finally see a Ferrari cross the finishing line in first place. A race that may have eventually led to the death of Gilles Villeneuve a few weeks later in Belgium, 1982's San Marino Grand Prix finished in internal controversy in a feud between Ferrari drivers Villeneuve and Didier Pironi. Despite qualifying behind the Renaults of Alain Prost and René Arnoux, Pironi and Villeneuve found themselves in first and second in the latter part of the race after the two Renault drivers were forced to retire. Ferrari ordered their two frontmen to slow, with a healthy lead over third place and an easy 1-2 finish in sight for the Scuderia, and traditional team orders at the constructor meant Villeneuve would be able to finish the race unchallenged from his teammate. Pironi, however, wasn't on the same page as his teammate. He passed the Canadian twice, including the final lap of the race, stealing the victory from Villeneuve and leading to a huge internal split at Ferrari, with the Canadian saying he would never speak to his teammate again after being stood sullen on the podium. 2 weeks later, Villeneuve was chasing Pironi's qualifying time in Belgium, and while pushing the car to the limit, lost control of his Ferrari and was tragically killed in the resulting crash. Many expected that Villeneuve had been pushing so hard to overtake his teammate in the session to prove a point after what had happened in Imola 2 weeks prior. Following on from the 1982 Grand Prix, the 83 race was won by another Ferrari driver, Patrick Tambay, in a beautiful tribute to the former driver Gilles Villeneuve. The Scuderia driver decked out his car in the number 27 of Villeneuve, as the Italian crowd present that weekend honoured the memory of the Canadian driver in the stands. But Tambay would go one step further than those in the grandstands, taking the lead early in the race and holding on for an emotional win dedicated to his fellow countrymen. Mika Hakkinen was looking to become reigning Formula 1 champion in 1999, and the McLaren given to him by Ron Dennis and the team was certainly up to the task. But even a great car can't guarantee a race victory in Formula 1, with driver and vehicle needing to be in sync for the full race to reach the finish first. That couldn't be more evident than the 1999 Grand Prix at Imola, when Hakkinen, in total control of the race, let the rear end of his car slip out on lap 17, sending him careering into the wall in a shocking error. Ferrari were waiting in the wings to capitalise, with Michael Schumacher taking the race win, ending Ferrari's barren run of race wins at the circuit since 1983, and helping to restore the German driver's title challenge for the season. Fernando Alonso's Renault was proving to be a powerful threat to Ferrari in the World Championship battle, with the Spaniard keen to push the pole-sitter Kimi Raikkonen in the early part of the Grand Prix. A driveshaft issue wrote off the Finnish driver's chances of competing that afternoon on lap 9. However, Michael Schumacher was hot on the heels of the Spaniard after starting well down the order in 13th on the grid. The German was right on the rear wheel of the Renault in the final laps of the race, but Alonso's ability to keep the former world champion at bay showed off his class and cool head behind the wheel. The Spaniard would hold on to the lead of the race for the victory, and eventually take his first of back-to-back Drivers' World Championships that year. Williams F1 had officially been dethroned after their success in the 80s and 90s in F1, as the rise of McLaren and Ferrari had kept the British constructor at bay. But after a 4-year hiatus from the top step of the podium, a Schumacher would get them back to winning ways at Imola in 2001. The win would come, however, not from the great Michael, but his brother Ralph, a collector's item in his F1 career and the first win in the sport for the young German. Starting from third on the grid, Schumacher got away quickly from the line, launching himself in front of both the McLarens of Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard, coming out of the first corner with the lead. And he wouldn't let it go. A landmark moment for both team and driver, Schumacher grabbing his first win in the sport and first of 3 wins that season with a remarkably controlled and comfortable drive up front. A race that lit the blue touch paper on possibly the greatest rivalry in Formula 1. The 1989 San Marino Grand Prix brought about the split at McLaren of Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna, with the two divided for their F1 careers from that race on. The Grand Prix saw a red flag come out after the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger was involved in an almighty crash on track. During the break in the race, the two McLaren drivers made a gentleman's agreement that the first driver through the first corner at the restart would be allowed to lead uncontested by their teammate. It was Prost that got the better of the Brazilian from second on the grid at the resumption of racing, with the French driver carrying the lead out of the opening corner. Senna, however, didn't fancy adhering to the agreement between the pair and took the lead back at the resulting second turn of the lap. Prost felt cheated by his teammate, and soon they were more rivals than companions. That would never change, giving F1 the exciting twists and turns of their tumultuous relationship. Another precursor of things to come at Imola, as Max Verstappen put the pressure early on Lewis Hamilton as the Red Bull driver launched into second place off the line, hanging on to the back of the British driver's Mercedes. The Dutchman stayed in contact with both Bottas and Hamilton for the majority of the race, before the 6-time world champion put his foot down to escape the chasing two. Verstappen looked like he'd be in for at least second on the podium, until late drama struck with just over 10 laps to go, as a rear tyre failure ended the Dutchman's afternoon and sank his car into the gravel. But a rare chance to see Verstappen pushing Hamilton early on would set up for a fantastic battle in the opening corners of 2021's race a year later, and would also set out the stall for Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton's battles on track for the next year or so to come. Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna had many battles on track, and the 1993 San Marino Grand Prix saw the Frenchman tick one off the win column against his on-track rival and also his teammate at Williams, Damon Hill. Prost started badly off the line, overtaken by both Senna and Hill after wheel spinning at the start. However, on lap 12, the Frenchman would pip the pair as the two leaders were engrossed in their own battle for first. The move saw the Frenchman somehow find a small gap on the inside of the pair, but the hard work had only just begun, as Prost, late on in the Grand Prix, saw his car suffer from his throttle being stuck open. Incredible control and a little bit of nursing saw him drag the Williams kicking and screaming across the line to take the victory, keeping the Frenchman's title hopes alive for that season. Perhaps the most well-known race at the historic circuit, and possibly the most well-known in Formula 1 history, the 1994 Grand Prix weekend, was no more for the tragedies that befell it than anything else. Friday practice should have set the alarm bells ringing for the sport when Rubens Barrichello suffered a crash that launched him over a tyre barrier, knocking him unconscious, with the Brazilian surviving the incident only thanks to the quick intervention of the medical crews at the circuit. However, Saturday qualifying wouldn't prove to be so lucky, with Roland Ratzenberger suffering a 190-mile-per-hour crash at Villeneuve Corner with a concrete wall, killing the Austrian instantly. Sunday began with carnage and would end in tragedy once again that weekend, Pedro Lamy drove into the back of the stalled Benetton of JJ Leto on the grid, causing an incident that injured spectators and saw the safety car come out on the circuit. The second lap after the restart saw Ayrton Senna go off the track at Tamburello Corner, colliding with a concrete barrier at 131 miles an hour. The Williams driver was pronounced dead later that evening as a result of the crash, as the sport lost one of its great drivers far too early, and 2 drivers in one weekend. So are there any other iconic races from Imola that we've left off our top 10 list that perhaps should have been included? Let us know as always in the comments section below, and remember GPFans.com and GPFans Global on social media for all of your latest F1 news and views.